Do you want to learn to play Tiny Epic Tactics?
In this video we're going to take you through the full rules for the game, and if you stay tuned till the end, hopefully you'll pick up a few tips and strategies along the way coming up. Hi, it's Tarrant.
And Stella from Meeple University, bringing you a variety of quality board game videos.
In this video, we're going to take you through the rules for Tiny Epic Tactics, a game by Scott Arms and published by Gameland Games.
Let's get to the table.
Tiny Epic Tactics is a tactical skirmish and area control game with mechanics reminiscent of video games such as Final Fantasy Tactics. In the game, each player controls a team of 4 allies who battle for control of this three-dimensional map which is constructed from the game box and its inserts. Players will move around the map to find the most tactically advantageous locations from which to attack their enemies and battle for supremacy. Players will ultimately earn their victory points in 4 ways: by reducing their opponent's unit's health to 0 and capturing them, by keeping their own units safe and uncaptured on the board until the end of the game, by the well-timed control of one or more of these 3 coloured control points, and by controlling villages. The game will play until one player has run out of units, or until a requisite number of control points has been captured, and the player with the highest score wins. In this video, we're showing you a prototype copy of the game. The art and components may not be final, and many of the shaped and printed tokens you can see here, as well as the printed cloth game board, are stretch goals in the Kickstarter campaign. The entire sprawling map and 3-dimensional scenery is made up from the game box and its inserts, and the entire game packs neatly away into the standard Tiny Epic sized box. To set up the game, start by constructing the map. You'll begin with the cloth layout on the table. When placing the terrain pieces, these borders in various locations on the board will show you where the terrain goes, and the letter will match the letter on the underside of the terrain. When placing the terrain, arrange it so that the arrow on top of the terrain matches the arrow on the space underneath. Place all 6 of the individual terrain pieces onto the board in this manner. Place the control card next to the board and the 3 flag tokens onto the start space. Each player is dealt a random beast, fighter, rogue and wizard, which will be the unique characters that you play during the game. Health, ammo and mana trackers are set to the tops of their tracks. Each player is dealt 2 tactics cards. They look at them, choose the one they want to keep, and the other is shuffled back into the pack. Choose a first player who places his or her 4 units onto these corner spaces marked with a 1. Clockwise around the table, the other players will place in the 2, 3 and 4 locations. In a 2-player game, the first player splits his or her units between spaces 1 and 3, and the second player between 2 and 4. You're now ready to play. Tiny Epic Tactics is played in a series of turns. On a player's turn, he or she will take a total of 3 actions which are spread across his or her units. There are 4 types of action in the game: movement, and 3 different types of attack: melee, missile, and magical. After any successful attack action, the targeted player will have the opportunity to counterattack immediately and outside of his or her normal turn, and therefore the 3 actions that a player takes on his or her turn may be interrupted by these counterattacks. Players may also be able to take extra actions or effects beyond their normal 3 through the use of a tactics card or a character ability, which we'll learn more about later in the video. After the player has taken 3 actions, faced any counterattacks, and taken any extra effects from cards, the player finishes his or her turn by drawing a new tactics card and discarding down to 2 if necessary. Play passes to the next player clockwise, and each player takes his or her turn in this manner, one after the other around the table, until the end of the game. There are some restrictions on how a player may distribute his or her 3 actions among the units on the board on a turn. When a player still has 3 or 4 units on the board, he or she has 2 options. Either each of the 3 actions is taken by a different unit, or one unit takes one action and one unit takes two. But the second option comes with two caveats. Firstly, that unit cannot take the same action twice, and secondly, that unit becomes weakened. Place a weakened token upon it. A unit which has been weakened can neither take an action nor launch a counterattack while it is in that condition. The weakened token will be automatically removed at the end of the player's next turn, or may be removed at any time if the unit takes 2 damage. Once the player is reduced to only 2 units on the board, he or she must now distribute 2 actions to one unit and 1 action to the other. The unit no longer receives a weakened token for doing this, but it must still take 2 different actions. When a player is reduced to a single unit on the board, this unit takes all 3 actions without receiving a weakened token, and it may now perform the same action multiple times. Next, we'll talk about the 4 different action types: move, melee attack, missile attack, and casting a spell. When taking a movement action, the unit has a number of movement points based on the number shown next to the boot on its card. Each movement point allows the movement of one space orthogonally. A player may move through his or her own allies, but not through an opponent. Several features on the map require extra movement points to deal with. Moving up 1 level of elevation costs 1 extra movement point. Moving into a peak costs 1 extra movement point, and all of these effects are compounding, so this move would cost 3 movement points. Moving into water costs 1 extra movement point, and moving into the ballista costs 1 extra movement point and allows the player to immediately take a free missile attack, and we'll talk about how that works later. Players may move through a portal. This costs a single movement point, and movement may continue afterwards. There are 8 portals on the board indicated by these pairs of arrows, and all portals are considered adjacent, even if the pictures on the doors on them do not match. Finally, when a unit enters or goes through a village space, that unit regains 4 health and all ammo or mana. When a unit starts its move in a village or the ballista, the unit cannot return to that same location on a move. Next, we'll talk about melee attack. All types of units can initiate a melee attack, although beasts are the strongest at doing so. Melee attack can be launched against an orthogonally adjacent unit at the same elevation. A unit's melee statistics are shown next to the red sword. When launching a melee attack, it is always successful at doing the amount of damage shown next to the heart in that box. Then roll a number of battle dice equal to the number of icons shown below the sword. This is called attempting a knockback, and when you do this, you're trying to get the red knockback icon. Push the opposing unit backward in a straight line 1 space for each knockback icon which was rolled. If the unit is impeded in any way from the full knockback distance, such as by hitting the edge of the map, hitting a wall, or running into another unit, then it suffers 1 extra damage. The unit also suffers the damage if knocked back into a portal. Consider the door to the portal to be closed. The next type of action is missile attack, and this can only be done by the 2 units that have an ammo tracker, the rogues and the fighters. A unit's missile attack statistics are shown next to the green bow and arrow, showing the amount of damage done, the range of the attack, and the number of dice rolled. To perform a missile attack, first choose a target, which is within your range. Range is counted by number of spaces orthogonally from the shooter. The unit may add 1 to its maximum range if the target is at a lower elevation, and must subtract 1 from maximum range if the target is at a higher elevation. So looking at the examples here from this red rogue, this beast is at a range of 3, this fighter is at a range of 3 but the rogue gets +1, this fighter is at a range of 2, and this fighter is at a range of 2 but the rogue gets -1. If a unit ascends one of the 3 peaks on the board, then it has unlimited range to attack anyone on the board with its missile attacks. Then the unit must spend 1 ammo and roll the dice. The unit spends 1 additional ammo for every arrow symbol rolled. If the unit runs out of ammo before spending on all of these extra symbols, then the attack is unsuccessful. Otherwise, the unit spends the required ammo and then deals the damage shown next to the green heart. There is no knockback for a missile attack, but there is the opportunity to counterattack, just as there is with any type of attack. The other way to take a missile attack is at the ballista, and any unit which ends its movement in the ballista, even one that can't normally make missile attacks, may immediately make a missile attack as a free action. This attack has a range of 4, deals a damage of 1, and, unlike other missile attacks, causes 1 space of knockback. The final type of action, which is available only to wizards, is to cast a spell. Each wizard in the game has a unique spell which is described in its text, but the basic mechanisms of casting a spell is the same across all wizards. The range of a wizard's spell is shown next to the blue hand icon, and the damage or effect is printed in text. To cast a spell, the wizard spends 1 mana and then spends up to 3 more mana to gain 1 die for each additional mana spent. So rolling 3 dice would cost a total of 4 mana. The wizard will roll the dice attempting to get the blue star symbol, as each blue star roll will make the spell more powerful. So in this case, the spell will deal 1 damage to the target, plus 1 additional damage for each star rolled. Most spells have a single target, but some have multiple targets. All of the targets must be within range, and when dealing with spells, range is counted in exactly the same way as it was for missile attacks. Across all 3 types of attacks, there are a couple of other common rules. Any unit which is standing in the forest when it's attacked has the ability to hide, and this reduces the damage taken by 1. Any unit standing in the water when attacked is open and unable to move freely and gains +1 damage when attacked. These additions and subtractions apply only to the initial hit, not any extra damage suffered through a knockback. Anytime any unit takes damage in an attack, that unit immediately has the opportunity to counterattack against the attacker. The counterattack takes place immediately outside the counterattacking player's turn. The exception to this is any wizard spell that has multiple primary targets. The counterattack may be any one of the 3 types of attack, but it must target the original attacker. If there is no legal counterattack possible, then the player simply misses out on counterattacking. For example, if this rogue shoots the blue beast, the beast does not have a ranged attack with which to counterattack against that rogue. But if this wizard performed a melee attack against the beast and failed to knock it back, the beast could immediately do a melee counterattack and deal significant damage to the wizard. So players need to use their units wisely and attack where they're at low risk of suffering counterattack. After the attack and counterattack, the action is finished. There is no double counterattack against a counterattack. When any unit runs out of health, it is captured. Remove the unit's meeple from the board and give the card to the player who captured it. That card will be worth 2 points at the end of the game. As such, you'll want to time your attacks carefully, as you'll get no points for being the one who removes the early health from a unit, but you'll get 2 points for landing the final blow. A major source of points in the game is the capturing of 1 or more of the 3 coloured control points. As you can see, capturing is worth 5 victory points. The battle for a control point is triggered the first time a player begins his or her turn with more units on the 6 spaces of that control point than any single other opponent, and has at least 1 unit on the larger signal trigger space. For example, at the start of the green player's turn, this would not trigger the control point, nor would this, but this would. Advance the matching control flag token 1 space. From this point forward, the flag token will advance again at the start of a player's turn if he or she has majority control of that point. And again, this means having more units than any single other player. But for subsequent advances after the first one, it is not necessary to have a unit on the trigger point. The player who causes the flag to advance to the end of the track gets to take the token, which will be worth 5 points at the end of the game. Once again, this means that timing is key in the game, as the players who cause the first and second advancements get no points, but the player who causes the third advancement gets the full 5 points. The other key feature of the game is the tactics cards, which allows player to take extra and surprise actions and give them a tactical advantage over their opponents. Each player will hold up to 2 tactics cards at any given time and draws a new one at the end of each turn, discarding down if necessary. Each tactics card has an if statement and a then statement. If during your turn you meet the conditions in the if statement, then you can play and discard the card to take the bonus shown in the then section. In a lot of cases, this will allow you to take an extra free action even with a weakened unit, and so this can be a good way of taking surprise actions that other people didn't think you were capable of taking. There's even one way of bringing a captured ally back into your team. The end of the game can be triggered in 2 ways, either by one player losing his or her final unit, or by a requisite number of control tokens being captured. This is 1 token in a 2-player game, 2 tokens in a 3-player game, or all 3 tokens in a 4-player game. Play continues until play passes to the player who triggered the end of the game. That player does not get another turn. For the purposes of this definition, it's the player who makes that final capture that triggers the end of the game, even if that occurs outside of his or her turn. Then proceed to endgame scoring. The player gains 2 points for each unit that he or she has captured of an opponent, 2 points for each of his or her own units that remains, and 5 points for any control tokens captured. Finally, the player gains 1 point for each village that is controlled by one of his or her units. The player with the highest score wins, and in the event of a tie, the tiebreakers in order are the player with the most surviving units, then the player with the most captured units, then the most control tokens, and then the most health remaining on all surviving units combined. If still tied, victory is shared. The rules that we've described here are for the free-for-all competitive mode of the game. The game will also come with a solo mode, a 2-player cooperative mode, and a 2 versus 2 team mode, all of which will have slightly different rules that we'll leave you to discover for yourself.
And that's how to play Tiny Epic Tactics. We hope that you enjoyed the video and we hope that you enjoy playing.
At the time of filming this video, Tiny Epic Tactics is about to be a live project on Kickstarter, so do check it out there if you're interested. We'll leave the link to the project in the comments section below. And if you'd like to see the game in action, we have a 1-round playthrough video, which you can also check out through a link in the description.
If you like this video, please let us know by hitting the like button. You can also write comments and feedback and questions in the comment sections below. If you'd like to join a Facebook group, Meeple University Community That Loves Board Game, I'll put the link in the description below.
And finally, if you'd like to be among the first notified for what's new from us, you can click on the Meeple in the corner to subscribe and do hit the bell for notifications.
Until next time!